Hello and welcome to the DSP project. I'm your host Rupert Brown, and this week we're going to be talking about layering snares. So those of you making drum and bass and dubstep and breaks and pretty much any style where you need a really strong snare, that's usually achieved by taking different elements from different snares and layering them together to make one big chunky snare. And it doesn't necessarily need to be done for making huge snares. You can also just layer snares to just make something more interesting and make something your own from other elements. Before we get into that though, I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. First of all, I want to mention Rhiannon and Blake, a couple very dear to my heart, very good friends of mine, and sadly they're leaving London, and what this means is I'm losing my cameraman and assistant editor, and also my designer, all in one hit. So I want to throw this out there. If you live in the Greater London area and you're interested in doing a bit of camera work and a bit of editing and that sort of thing, maybe you want to get some experience, then feel free to email me, inbox@theDSPproject.com. But let's get on with the tutorial. So here we've got 3 MIDI channels. I've got a very basic MIDI clip, 2 hits here in looped up in channel number 1, and channels 2 and 3 feed off, they take their MIDI input from this channel 1 here. In each channel I've just got a simpler instrument, and I've gone through and I've picked out 3 samples, 3 snare samples. I haven't tried processing this yet, so I'm not sure exactly what it's going to turn out, but hopefully it should be okay. I'll play you the 3 samples now so you can get a feel for it. I picked this one because I like the kind of, there's kind of like a clappy sound, like a type sound. And that's what I want for sort of some of the main kind of color of the sound of our snare. The next one is kind of pitched down quite low, and I've picked that for the bass. That's going to be the bass of our snare. And then this one has some interesting high frequency information going on, so that's going to be kind of the bright part of our snare. Now when picking these samples, sometimes I will go and take loops like breaks and actually just sample snares out of them, but just for ease of use for this demo today, I'm just using straight snare samples from a snare library. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with and process each one individually. So this one here, it's got kind of like a rattling thing on the end of it. I don't want any of that, so I'm just going to pull this up to there. I want to keep most of the attack and things on this one, I think. To keep the sort of the suddenness of it, I'm going to adjust the envelopes. I'm going to get rid of all the release and sustain, and the decay here, I'm going to bring this down as well. There we go. Okay. Fine, so that's enough for this first part here. Sometimes I might put an EQ on that to roll off the bass section. In fact, I think I will do that. I'll put an EQ8 on here, and just at 100 Hertz, turn it into sort of like a high pass filter, just to roll off any unnecessary bass content. We don't want that messing with anything else in our song. Fine, okay, so let's move on to the next sample. As I said, I want this for the bass content, so I'm going to put an EQ8 on here again. This time I'm going to say, I'm going to roll off some of the top, and I'm going to take at about 200 Hertz, which is about here, and give it a bump. Tighten the Q up because I only want to just I don't want to affect too many other frequencies, just the 200 Hertz. Really push that up. Now if we want to have a look at this and put a spectrum on here, okay, so we can see that the main part of the snare is happening at about 130 Hertz, plus it sounds really low. It's clearly being kind of transposed down, so I want to bump that back up again. So it's sort of about, okay, that's starting to sound too high, maybe about there, and that should hopefully put us at about close to, it's about 180. That puts that much closer to where we want it, and I might bring this in as well. Okay. Actually, I might adjust the envelopes on this as well. Again, turning all this down. I just want that initial yeah, that should be fine. I might even get rid of some of this as well. So it's literally just the just that sort of little bit of bass bump that I want to give to my sound. All right, so let's turn this off, or let's get rid of this completely. Now let's see how these two are sounding together. Alright, so moving on to the third one, and as I said, we want this to be the high information. So let's start off by coming back to our EQ8 again, high pass. I want this to be right up here somewhere, about 2K. And I'm going to take a bit of an attack on there. Okay, so let's hear all three of those together. Okay, sort of quite getting there, a bit of sort of a tighter sound. Now what I want to do is I'm going to select one, holding down Shift, select the other point there to highlight all three, and I'm going to push Command G to group them all together. So this basically runs all of these three channels into this group one bus here, and so now I want to do some processing of all these parts together. So I'm going to start off. I'm quite a fan of the T-Rex packages by IK Multimedia, so I'm going to be using some of this stuff today. I'm going to start. Actually, no. I'll tell you what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with the Camel Fat by Camel Audio, and I'm going to turn off the filter, the EQ and the compression for now. I'm just going to use the distortion to do exactly that, sort of crunch it up a bit. A bit of tube, a little bit of this. Right. Cool. And now I'm going to compress, to sort of help squish all those together. And turn this back. Turn the threshold down. So you get it doing some work. Crank it right up. Get it working for a minute. Cool. I'm going to put an EQ on here. This, and I just want to add a bit of boost the highs a bit. Sweeten that up, and maybe let's have a listen. There's kind of something that's, listen to that sound after the initial hit. There's kind of this here. I don't like the it's taking too long to sort of decay off. So let's edit this hit here. That's better. Okay, now I'm going to put it into the classic clipper, which is works kind of like limiting, except for it's a bit harsher. Rather than kind of reducing the levels, it kind of rolls off the parts where it clips, so it sort of clips in a nice way. And I'm going to turn the output down quite a bit, and then crank the input up. Get it really working for its money. Okay, and again I'm still hearing this tail just sounding a bit too. There we go. Now, what else am I going to do with this? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw an EQ8 on here as well, and I'm going to use this high pass because I want to roll off around. I mean, 100's pretty low. Usually, let's say 150. Because again, we don't want any frequencies in our snares that's going to interfere with our kick or sub. And then I'm going to take right about 100 and take the EQ up, and just going to dip it about 500 because a lot of the muddledness, I find a lot of frequencies build up at around 500 Hertz. So if you put a bit of dip in there and try and leave a bit of room for the rest of the parts of the track. So if you want to listen to the EQ off and on, not a huge amount of difference that you can hear there, but it will make a difference come when it comes time to the mix. So that's one approach for layering snares. There are quite a few different techniques, and people have their different varying opinions. Some people say that you should have each sound should have its own frequency band, so just filter out just the highs of one, just the mids and just the bass of another. If you're not doing that and not giving their own frequency space, you do need to be aware of cancellation. So you might find when you put one snare on top of another that one of them gets particularly quieter, or it loses something, and then when you solo it, it sounds nice, and then you put it in with everything else, and it's kind of losing something. The chances are that cancellation's at play here. There's sort of the two easiest ways to get around that is to try slightly just offsetting it slightly, ever so slightly, or just try and invert the phase, and that should hopefully get you around that problem. Yes, so that is all we've got time for today. If you've enjoyed this video, as always, you can head down to the dspproject.com to leave a message under this video, and also subscribe to get all future videos delivered to you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.